Stitch. My name is Connie, and we have
Frank.
Frank today. Yay! I'm so glad that y'all joining me today. I am now at 28 subscribers as of Wednesday while I'm recording. Hopefully those numbers go up by the time this uploads to YouTube. So I hope everyone is having a yarny day today. I also want to let y'all know that my fur babies say meow. Well, Sophie says meow. Allie probably says hiss. Allie's a hisser. Don't get me wrong, she's a sweet baby, but she's ornery. And she's a loner type of cat. But then she has her little moments that she gets clingy. But she gets skittish real easily. Like when it rains, she goes into hiding. And a lot of times you'll hear her cry. And she doesn't even meow much. She rarely meows. And when she does, it's real low. Like if she would meow in the background, you probably wouldn't even hear her. And Sophie is a complete opposite. She's a big love bug. It's like every morning, usually we have to open the front door, and she perches on this stool and looks outside. She either does that or runs to plop on me in my recliner. Another thing I want to bring up, I know I said that I was going to do knitting Thursdays, but I'm going to change it to knitting Fridays. So after this first knitting video, my knitting videos will be on Fridays. It's just hard to get everything accomplished, to have everything ready for Thursday, because I've been having a lot of appointments, and then I'm usually having to edit and upload the videos around Frank's work schedule. So I think having an extra day in between will give me enough time to prepare what I want to discuss and get everything I need to. So that's going to be changing. So it's knitting Fridays after this video. Okay, I want to show y'all guys this is the shawl that has been my favorite that I have made. And when I first saw this pattern, they only had a written pattern, and I didn't understand what needed to be done on the pattern. I kept hoping, I wish they had a video tutorial, and I looked and looked and looked, but there wasn't one. Then finally, a video tutorial finally got made. This is a yarn inspiration pattern. Morley Bird does the video, and Morley Bird I love. Morley Bird taught me how to read knitting patterns, because when I first started learning how to knit, I did a lot of her video tutorials, and I really learned a lot. So if you're new at knitting, I highly recommend her videos. And let me show you. Oh, look, I even still have my stitch marker on it. And that's one thing too, when you're knitting, if you're a beginner, just learning, you have a right side and a wrong side when you knit. And you should always mark the right side with a stitch marker. That way you can easily keep track. Hopefully you can see it. But there's a stitch marker right here. Oops, my hat's falling off. So let me show you look how pretty the hearts are on it. It's called Warming Hearts. Hopefully you can see the whole thing. And this is one of the most challenging patterns that I've done so far. So this was a huge accomplishment for me, and I was quite proud of it. And the yarn that I use for this pattern is the sorry, but I have trouble pronouncing this, and I'm probably still butchering it. Huya yarn by Red Hort. I always want to call it Hygie. I like to pronounce things like it's spelled. Like whenever I was in school, I could never say the word democracy properly. I would always say democracy. And I finally got to the point where I knew I was saying it incorrectly, but I could never remember how to say it right. And I think I was about a senior in high school before I finally was able to pronounce it right. But anyway, the color of the yarn is powder. I'm gonna put in the description box below the link for the tutorial in case you're interested in making it. Now, whenever I first tried to do the video tutorial, it took me a while to figure it out. I was very frustrated. I didn't think I would get it, but it finally came to me. So if you decide to try this pattern and you're having trouble with it, you can always contact me. Send me an email. I have my email in the description box below, and or you can also contact me through my Facebook group, Just Another Stitch. I have that link too. And I'll do what I can to try to help you so you can accomplish making it. We also have a visitor here. Say hi, Sophie! And the hat that I had on earlier, but it kept slipping, so I took it off. It's a beret. I made it with the same yarn as the shawl. I was on a kick when I made a shawl. I would make a matching hat, and a lot of times I also did a matching headband and a scrunchie. When I say matching, I mean in the same yarn color. Unfortunately, I don't remember what pattern I used when I made it. I know it was a beret pattern that I found on Ravelry. It was a free pattern. I've been trying to find it because I looked back on Facebook in the groups to see if I had posted the link. Because usually people will ask me what pattern I use when I make something. And I just couldn't find it. I'm sorry. If I do come across it, I will link it below, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Sorry. Okay, I want to discuss knitting needles with you. And knitting needles is something that you cannot skimp on. You need to invest in a decent set. Don't do like I did. I literally bought the absolute cheapest set of circular needles I could find off of eBay. And on top of that, they came from China. And they started to pop on me. And what I mean by that is, let me show you. See, well, this is going to screw on, which I'm going to show you that later. But you have this cord here, and it connects to the needles. Where the cord connected to the needle, the plastic started popping. And while I was in the middle of a project, and I was scared that it was going to come off, so I literally had to put the project aside until my knit picks came in. And I'm going to show you what the knit picks needles look like. This is the long set that I have. And I put it in this little pink case. It doesn't come with the case, but that's the needles. And this is the long cord that comes with it. This is what you use when you're making shawls or blankets. And there's actually an even longer cord that you can buy separately. And that cord, I've heard, sometimes you need a even longer one for making ponchos. And then you have this cord here, which I think this is the one that most people typically make hats with. I'm not as keen on making hats with this cord. I prefer the smaller cord, which is this one. And this cord actually didn't come with this set. I had to purchase it separately. But that's what I like for hats. And another thing too, the long needles here, they're very good for using when you're making blankets or shawls, projects like that. And also, pretty much anything that you normally would knit on straight needles, you can knit on circulars because it acts the same way. And then I also have a set of the short needles. And these are really good for making hats. And whenever I first started making hats, I didn't have the short set yet. And I was using the long needles, and it was frustrating because I had to keep yanking the stitches over about every 4 or 5 stitches because I just didn't have enough room to move. But the short ones take care of that, and these are short needles, see, and they come with the cords like this. And that's what I like to use for needles. And when it comes to needles, I have the Knit Picks brand. They're probably your most affordable. I think Knitter's Pride is about the same price too, or close to it. They're also a good brand. And I think Aldi is one I've heard, but they get pricier. And the one I've heard people talk about the most is a Chigaroo, which I'm probably mispronouncing it. But those are pricey needles. But Knit Picks is affordable. Then you're also going to want double pointed needles. And these are my needles. I got mine off of Amazon. I think it was one of the ones that Amazon recommended. Now I don't find that they have the glide like the Knit Picks do. Down the road I may invest in a better set. But I typically use these mostly at the end of hats. Whenever after you do it in the round and you have to put it onto needles. And I'm also going to demonstrate how everything works when you get interchangeable needles. Because when you first get your set, it doesn't really come with much instructions. So let me show you. Okay, you have this little like screwdriver type thing, and there's a hole. You stick it in the hole. Oops. Like that. And then you stick your needle and you just screw it. And you want to make sure you get it really tight, because if it's not tight, sometimes it will unscrew on you. And that can create issues with stitches slipping, which I'm fixing to get into that. And then if you want, when you want to unscrew it, you just put the thing, the little screwdriver thing in, and you twist it the opposite direction, and voila, it's off. Then you also have these things that come with it. These are end caps, which they really come in handy if you need your needles for another project, because you just take it off and then you screw that on. And those stitches will not slip past here. And really, it's probably best to use it when you put your projects down, but I find it's time consuming. So usually I use these type of end caps, and you just stick them on the end of your needles. And that's very important, because you do not want to lay your work down without an end cap. And I think some people will even do it where they stick the needles in the yarn a certain way. But you want to have end caps. And also, my recommendation, when you put your work down, push your stitches back further down, because the closer they are to the end of the needle, they can fall off. And sometimes these end caps will fall off on you. And we all want to avoid slip stitches, because that is like the kryptonite to knitting. And I don't think anybody enjoys slip stitches. And that's one of the hardest things when it comes to learning how to knit, because when you're a beginner, you can expect to have slip stitches. It's something that comes with time. The more experience you have, the more you learn how to avoid them. Because like now, I rarely slip stitches. And a lot of times I find you got to hold your fingers a certain way. And you always kind of want to have your fingers where it's on the yarn to help prevent the slip stitches. And I also want to point out the stitch counter again. You need this to count rows, and of course stitch markers, like I was mentioning earlier in my video. And with knitting, a lot of times, like in shawls, you usually need them around the center stitch, usually the stitch before and after the center stitch. And sometimes you'll need them after like your first so many stitches too, at the beginning and the end. But invest in stitch markers. Sorry, I got tongue-tied. Oh, and another thing I want to point out, when it comes to needles, typically as a beginner, it's recommended to start off using bamboo. Because with bamboo, they're not as slick, so your stitches aren't as likely to slip off as easily. And as you get more experienced, you can switch to the aluminum like what I use, which it's a personal preference. Some people, will stay using bamboo. They love them. And another thing too, with aluminum, it a lot of times can help you build up your speed when it comes to knitting. I find it helps me. I don't, everyone's different, but that's just my personal opinion. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel, like my video, and share it. And I want to explain to y'all why it's important to do these things. Because a lot of times people don't realize this, and even I didn't realize this until I started getting more involved and looking into doing my own channel. But in order to get monetized as a YouTuber, you have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 viewable watched hours. Where once I get monetized and can make a little money, it's also a little extra spending money for me on my supplies for crochet and knitting. And not only that, it will help me to be able to afford to do more giveaways for you, my viewers. And another thing too, I also highly recommend that when you watch YouTube videos, like their videos and comment on it. Because YouTube pays attention to those things with their logarithms, and it helps to get the channel more out there on YouTube, where YouTube will recommend it to others. So it's really a helpful thing, because YouTube likes to see what people seem to be watching and what they're liking. So please make sure you do that for whatever YouTube channels that you're watching, because I firmly believe in supporting other YouTubers. And in the yarn community, they are some awesome people. I've gotten to where I'm starting to talk with more and more other people in the yarn community, making new friends, and I'm really enjoying it. So I want to remind everybody, from now on, Knitting Thursdays will now be Knitting Fridays, so the videos will be on Fridays instead of Thursdays. Also, I do plan to do a video on New Year's Day. It probably won't really be knitting or crochet related, but I want to take the time to wish everybody a happy new year and just talk about some stuff that day. And I want to wish everybody a very happy yarny day. And bye-bye.